What up, drone freaks? Welcome back to Quad Vision. Okay, so here is the construction, the build. It's pretty much finished. I got the Brother Hobby Returner R4 2206 2450 kV motors. I am using a Racer Star F3 30 amp all-in-one with OSD integrated. It's one board, really nice and compact and very reasonably priced. I'm using a unbranded Banggood 1177 style camera here. It's a 16:9 ratio because I really just prefer that through my Sky Zone goggles. I want to see wide ratio, not distorted. These cameras are $13 each. It's a 2.5mm lens. Seems like a decent field of view. I modded this interior frame is super tight, so I had to, in order for the camera to really be able to have a little bit more ability to adjust angle, it's so tight in there. This, the standard 1177 style camera just barely is maneuverable in there. In any case, you might be able to see a little bit. I had to Dremel out some of the edges of the corners of the camera just so it could have a little bit of ability to move if I so choose. I usually fly at 35-40 degrees, but if I want to put it down a little bit maybe, or be able to jack it up. And in order to do that, I really had to mod the camera. It was so freaking tight, tighter than the frog, so I had to Dremel off some of the corners of the camera in there to give it a little bit more space to move. I also Dremeled off half or 2/3 of the carbon side plates here. I wanted to show more of the aluminum, reduce a little bit of weight. I felt like this portion was redundant, irrelevant, so I Dremeled that off as well. I fly Sky with the Evolution controller, which I do like a lot, mainly because it's really got a great form factor and it's very light and compact. But I'm using a micro receiver, FSA8S, and I'm using the Eachine VTX micro receiver, VTX3 here. This is switchable 2550-200. I've had so much difficulty with cloverleaf and pagoda antennas snapping near the base. I just, I kind of just want to go with these dipole VTX antennas that are flexible. Basically, I'm not really looking to fly 200-300 meters away, so I'm not really worried about the the range so much of the video feed. So I'm hoping. I've never used one of these micro receivers VTXs before, but I know some of my buddies do, and I've heard generally good things about these VTXs. So I'm going to try it out. They do run hot if you run them higher. If you run them up to 50 milliwatts or 200 milliwatts, I hear they run really hot. In any case, here's my kind of ugly solder job. This all-in-one flight controller ESC OSD comes with the the direct to board attach XT60, which obviously is a flaw because it will put a lot of pressure on the board itself and break and snap here under pressure. So what I did was, and I didn't have any other hollowed out XT60 connectors, so I took a drill to this and drilled these out over here and made this connector lead here. I'm having issues with my soldering iron. It does not make a real nice, shiny, fully liquid, weld. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my soldering wire. But everything's wired up and it's connected and it's working. I'm gonna put it all together and show you what it looks like. Also, obviously, take it for the maiden. Let's take a look at that. Peace. Cool. So here it is, the complete Realacc Purple 215. I built it out, and I've flown about 9 packs through it. At first, it needed a lot of tuning. It felt really icky and squishy, but after really bumping up the P's and then also the D's, it really felt locked in. Not perfect, still getting used to it, but a lot more responsive, a lot more tight, a lot more precise. I also bumped up the eyes slightly. I was on a full throttle. I was having a little bit of a slight yaw issue, so I bumped up the eye on the eye on the yaw. So I made a few mods to it. It's got some pretty cool components. We can walk through that now. Initially, I was going to use Brother Hobby Returner R4s, but I bought these used off RC groups, and one of them was bunk. It was stuttering and it was not running. It was stuttering and stopping entirely, and I don't know what was wrong with it. So I swapped those out. Took a lot of work, a lot of soldering, as you can imagine, but I put in 2306 Racer Star motors, the big beefy 2306 class. This is 2400 kV motor, and I can confidently say this is probably the most powerful, fastest quad I have. These props, these are the 5040s. These are the King Kongs. They're kind of lame because they're really too soft. Yes, they're efficient, and yes, they're mainstream. One of the most popular propeller, formats. But I think the King Kong plastic is a little too soft and flimsy. And on full throttle with these beefy ass motors, it was making some weird low frequency kind of like buzzing sound. I'm thinking that these props are flexing too much under the stress of these beefy motors. So I'm gonna try some 5045s. I also ordered some Cyclone 5050s, I believe it is, the V3s off Banggood. So I'll be looking to swap those in eventually. But thus far, I'm very, very pleased with this quad. So let's go through all the specs. I have a Racer Star F3S all-in-one board. So this is a 30 amp F3 plus OSD board. So far it's working great. My solder job, I'm still pretty much a novice. It's pretty lame, but I was recently told by a buddy that the Banggood solder might not have enough lead in it, or it's just inferior quality, and that might be one of the problems, when I'm trying to get a nice shiny, smooth ball of solder when I'm tinning up pads or adding or soldering on the wires. I'm having some difficulty, and I don't want to leave that iron on the pad forever and heat up the board or damage the board. But that being said, I got it done. Unfortunately, these motors were not coming with long enough leads to reach the all-in-one, so I had to add literally like a freaking 10mm section of wire to reach the all-in-one. Lame. So Banggood, or Racer Star, excuse me, should really put 150mm wires on there. I don't know, 150, 200mm wires is what all motor manufacturers should be putting out there now for these all-in-ones. That would make life a lot easier. And let's move on to the next component. So I'm running micro receiver here. I fly the Evolution, Turnigy Evolution right now. So I put an FS-A8S receiver in there, micro receiver, super small. It's like 1.5 grams or whatever. I also put a micro Eachine VTX 03, I believe it is, in there. It's back here. It's switchable, 25, 50, 200. So I've never used this, these micro VTXs, but this is working great for me thus far. One drawback is it gets really freaking hot. It's got an IPEX antenna connector here. I actually knocked off one of the antennas in some of those flights, and I replaced it already. And I put hot glue on the IPEX connector to give it some extra strength. But these things run so freaking hot, the glue melted almost completely off. It had a big glob of glue right on it, but it's almost all melted away. Crazy. So that's one thing to consider. If you're gonna run this small VTX, this micro VTX, don't leave it sitting around without flying it and getting some air cooling going on, because it gets hot. I have it set to 50 milliwatts. It's 25, 50, 200. I've heard, or I've seen online guys claiming that the 200 milliwatt setting will really cook this thing. But when my antenna popped off in one of those crashes, and it was sitting there on the field for a few minutes as I walked out and did that walk of shame, I'm sure this thing was cooking hot, but it didn't break, so that's good news. So for whatever it's worth, in general, with regards to these all-in-ones, I am not a big fan of all-in-ones that have an integrated VTX, because the VTX for me is a problem component that I've broken on many quads, and obviously they run hot. So heat is the enemy of a lot of these components. So, why would you put a very fragile and very high heat component into the board, into an all-in-one? I think that's potentially not the best way to go. Just my 2 cents. So I try to avoid all-in-ones that have integrated VTX, especially after my experience with the Fly Tower F4 all-in-one. That was on my old model, the Frog. Suffice to say, it had issues, and I dealt with the manufacturer and the retailer. They actually did refund it, and I went out and bought. I had a problem with the actual flight controller. I got a replacement flight controller for it, because the old ESC board still worked, at least I thought, and I was running it on another quad that I built out over here. This one over here, it's the Realacc X5. In any case, I'm having, I guess what I've seen other people have the same issue is that the ESC gets too hot and then fails. So I'm having a flip of death because one of the motors is basically shutting down after flying around and ramping up the throttle a few times after a few minutes. So I'm pretty much done with this this particular all-in-one. It's it's sad because I haven't had much luck with all-in-ones. This is the first all-in-one I ever had, and the Racer Star is the second. The Racer Star got through 9 packs, 0 problems. So hopefully that will continue. I'm very happy with this purple 215 and the setup it's currently configured right now. All right, what else we got on here? All right, this entire quad was bought off Banggood, and the whole thing was about 150 bucks, with pretty beefy, specs. So right now, if this continues to fly consistently, this is going to be my favorite quad. The camera is a 1177 clone. It's a 16:9 ratio 1200 TV line camera off Banggood for 13 bucks. Yes, it's a cheap ass camera, and it doesn't have like wide dynamic range. It's CMOS, but it's running. I personally want to try to stick with 16:9 ratio cameras. My goggles, I fly Sky Zone. I want to have that proper ratio of field of view, and eventually all cameras obviously will switch to 16:9 eventually. I want to just get ahead of that. I just prefer that if I can. I do fly 4:3 ratio cameras. It just makes me feel awkward sometimes, especially if I'm flying tight proximity gates, or acro through trees. So I tried out this camera and I'm pretty happy with it. It's dirt cheap. It's 13 bucks. It's 69. They say it's 1200 TV line. I'm not too worried about the resolution per se. I just want something 16:9 that's decent resolution. It doesn't have a lot of latency, and this camera is working for me generally speaking. It's 13 bucks. I've gone through. I have a couple of these Foxeer Monster 16:9 ratio cameras, and I just we abuse these craft. I mean, I had a giant accident where I came head on and crashed and smashed the lens of my Monster V2 on my other Monster. I don't want to shell out 40 bucks for every single camera and then just smash it to smithereens a week or two later. I'm not the best pilot, but I want to push the envelope and continue to be aggressive. So I try to buy some of the components that I try to find a balance, suffice to say. With regards to these 2306 motors, I bought them for literally, $8, $9 each on Banggood. I had to give it a shot, and I think it was Engineer X on YouTube said that they really performed generally well versus the Emax 2306s, the white motors. I think these started to underperform, when you started to step into the 6-inch propeller class. But guess what? I'm probably never gonna fly that class, so why not try these out? And so far, I'm pretty happy with them. All right, so I've had a few crashes with this craft thus far through the 9 packs. One of them was I'm flying in a pretty tight park with some invisible telephone or telephone wires, and I ran into them doing a sharp turn and hitting the throttle too much and going up in the air too much. That was no big deal. But I also am flying through some soccer goal posts, and I smashed into it, and I'll put that flight footage on the end of the video. But the craft survived. I got a little ding on the arm here, and this little extension in the arm here is to protect it, and it held up pretty well. A nice little ding here. Had to replace this prop. Like I said, I'm gonna get more sturdy props on here, like the Cyclone V2s or V3s, frankly. These props are nice and efficient, but you always have to bend them back. At some point, I'm sick and tired of bending them back. I just want to have them break off and replace them. That's just the way I like to roll. So, that being said, I also put the light old Frog battery plate on here. The entire craft, now that it's fully built out, let's see here, weight comes in at 312 grams. Hey, that's not bad. It's not super duper light, but considering you've got these heavy duty motors which weigh like 33 grams each, this is a pretty decent weight, given the powertrain we got on here. So, to wrap it up, I'm really happy with this thus far. I've only built from total scratch 2 quads. This is my second quad. Every other quad I've built, and I've flown, is pre-built. I went through a lot of JJR Pro, P200s and P175s. I've been through a bunch of Furby futons. I'm still learning a lot, and thus far, this is an awesome craft. All right, one thing I almost forgot to mention was look how tight this is. You're definitely gonna need. You'll basically only have room for 2 boards at the most here. I went with 1 board, and then I went with micro receiver and VTX. But that being said, the camera the real estate for the camera is super tight. This is an 1177 style camera. I literally had to Dremel and shave off the corners for this camera to be able to adjust the angle. I'm flying just about almost 45-degree angle, but in order to do that with the screws and the tightness of this camera mount real estate, I had to shave off the corners. So that's something to keep in mind. There is some modding involved with this purple frame, probably, unless you want to go with the Runcam Micro or the Runcam Mini. I don't know if the Micro will fit because this is you know, for the 1177 size width. One last thing, I did modify, as in my first video I was saying, well, what's the point of having a full carbon plate across the whole side? It's just extra weight, more screws, when all you need is the camera mount for the carbon here. So I Dremeled off 2/3 of the side carbon plates. Gives more cooling to the components, which do run hot, like this VTX, and reduces weight. Small and easy mod to do, and I would recommend it. So to wrap it up, I'm very, very pleased with this frame. It's crashed at least 2-3 times, no major problems. It's held up well. It's super tight and compact like the Frog Race frame. You're going to need all-in-ones, you're going to need micro components potentially, and with regards to the 1177 camera, you will have to potentially Dremel or shave off or sand off the corners to get it to rotate at different angles to get the right angle that you like. In other words, to lower the angle, I think you really have to cut Dremel off the corners. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck at like 40-degree angle, which might not be suitable for most or many flyers, many pilots. Alright, that being said, I will finish off the video with some flight footage. I am loving this frame and this quad. I'm going to be building out a bunch of other funky setups in the near term. And you know, if you have any comments with regards to how I did this or any advice, please do share. What are your thoughts about having, you know, the King Kong 5040 propellers, which are really kind of soft, on such a beefy motor? I think that potentially is a problem with the incredible kV or power of these motors. I think that's it. Thanks for watching Quad Vision. Peace out.